Good morning. Welcome to the June meeting of this Knoxville Historic Zoning Commission. This meeting is broadcast on several TV stations, so please remember to speak clearly and directly into the microphones. Dallas, will you call the roll, please?
Yes, good morning. For the record, the Knox County Historic Zoning Commission has no business this month and will not meet. So for the Knoxville Historic Zoning Commission, Commissioner Blackburn.
Here.
Commissioner Eason. Commissioner Bradley.
Here.
Commissioner Fox has informed us she will not be here today. Commissioner Hearns.
Here.
Commissioner Mitchell.
Here.
Commissioner Randazzo.
Here.
Commissioner Tillman.
Here.
Commissioner Webster.
Here.
All right,
Thank you.
7 present, sir.
Thank you, Dallas. At this time, we'll have a swearing in of the speakers. If you wish to speak on an item, please stand now and answer with "I do" to the following affirmation. I solemnly affirm that the testimony I'm about to give shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Thank you. We ask that all speakers please limit their presentation to 5 minutes. We also ask that speakers please give their name and address before speaking. Please sign in at the desk, legibly printing your name and address. Appeals of any Historic Zoning Commission decisions may be made to Chancery Court within 60 days of the date of this meeting. This time, I'll ask for approval of the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Seconded.
Thank you. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Lindsay, will you give us the staff reports, please?
Sure. So the level 1 COAs issued since the last meeting at 809 Eleanor Street. The applicant is repairing and replacing in patches wood corner boards, trim, and siding. At 417 East Scott, it's a new in-ground swimming pool that's located to the rear of the house and not visible from the right-of-way. At 240 East Scott, the applicant is renewing previous COAs from June and August 2018 and July 2021. This all involves repair and replacement and porch work, including one alternative material previously approved by the HCC. And then at 215 West Glenwood Avenue, the applicant is replacing gutters and downspouts and repairing wood fascia and soffit.
All right. Thank you. Let's go into our agenda. Our first case is 4th and Guild at 916 Luttrell Street. It is case 6I24-HZ.
Right, so this is an exterior rehabilitation project to a 2-story shed roof massing on the rear elevation. As you can see on the left, the existing shed roof section included a small upper story porch enclosed by a vinyl sided railing and supported by square wood posts, and then a small projecting shed roof with exposed rafter tails below, then an enclosed section on the first story which projects out over a basement access. There's a fire escape that extends from the first story to the ground level. So this work is somewhat after the fact. The applicant has removed the vinyl siding, removed the porch roofing and fascia, removed a section of the roof line, and here as well, and then enclosed some windows. The upper level was reconstructed a little bit to create additional interior space on the right side and create a shed roof between the upper and first story. So we can see that here in these drawings. It says a drawing of what was existing and then a drawing of what is proposed. So this is that 4/12 pitch roof that's between the upper and the first stories, and you can see it in a side view here. On the first story, there are 2 windows that will be removed and enclosed with siding, and then the scope of work also includes the removal of the rear roof cladding, the removal of the existing wood fascia and soffit and replacement with vinyl, and the installation of new fiber cement siding on the rear. And the applicant also proposes to reconstruct the railing on this 2nd-story porch, restoring it to measure 36 inches. So some of the findings, again, this design review is after the fact. The work was initiated without HCC review or permits, and it has not been completed. Overall, and I can pull these up, the multi-story porch as existing, it's not entirely an original element of the house. There is a rear massing visible on the 1950 Sanborn fire insurance map. Overall, this rear elevation is highly modified and the original configuration isn't evident. As the 2nd-story addition is on the rear and a highly modified elevation, enclosing that additional section doesn't detract from the overall character of the house. However, this roof line, which you can see kind of drawn out here, and you can see sort of beginning to be framed out here, is not compatible with the existing roof line on the left. It doesn't appear necessary for the enclosure of the second story. The half of this roof has been removed, so the commission should provide input on the revised roof lines on the rear elevation. Fiber cement lap siding hasn't typically been approved as a replacement material on original houses, only on new additions, new construction, or new secondary structures. So wood lap siding should be used. Overall, there's a finding about windows. The applicant has clarified that the windows will be reused on the first story. While restoring a railing to meet building codes may be appropriate within the guidelines, railing detail drawings should be submitted to staff for review. And then additional building code elements may affect this proposed design with regards to the existing fire escape and the foundation under the porches. So the staff recommendation is for approval of the following elements: removal of the existing vinyl siding, repair to the existing fascia and soffits, enclosure of that second story right side massing, and removal of 2 windows on the first. Staff recommends denial of the proposed fiber cement lap siding with wood to be substituted, and denial of the proposed vinyl soffits with wood soffits to be installed. Staff recommends a revised roof line drawing for the rear elevation be submitted pending commission input, along with a railing detail drawing. And then additional revisions may be necessary related to building code modifications. Items not aligning with the guidelines or the HCC review may require further review by the commission.
Thank you, Lindsay. Is the applicant present?
Yes.
Nope. Good morning.
Morning.
Should we just start talking?
Yeah, if you don't mind, well, state your name and address, please.
All right, I'm Matthew Bowers, live at 1909 All Road.
Okay, yes. Do you have anything to add to Lindsay's presentation?
No, she did a decent summation. Just some clarification, I mean, we're really not changing the space. So if you look at that left picture there, you got those 3 windows. That's an enclosed space for unit 1. Above that is a balcony kind of porch, which you can see with the 4x4 posts holding up the roof that was put on when the fire escape was added. That is an open area, so the issues, we have rot in between the 2, right above those windows that had to be replaced. The cross boards that were going across were rotted out to where you couldn't even support anything. So in order to fix the issues, we had to take off posts far enough to that point to then be able to rip off this section so that we could rebuild the wall and get rid of the bad so that it would be strong. That entire wall with those windows was bowing out. I mean, it was kind of like falling towards the driveway. So we had to deconstruct to fix what we needed to do. Now, where those 3 windows are, that is an enclosed space when they created this fire escape. So that's an enclosed space for 1, to where it was an open space for 3. That space is used kind of storage and a space off of the bedroom. But the rot occurred because the way that balcony floor was, it allowed the water to come in, come down through that wall and created the rot. So because it was an enclosed space, because the upstairs unit number 1 already has a nice windowed, closed-in porch, it was determined, I mean, we felt it wasn't necessary to rebuild all that. So we put a shed roof there, which is enclosing the space for 1, the lower area, so that now has roof. The upstairs unit still needs access to that fire escape, so you can see the added on 4x4 that's going up by itself. It's kind of temped in right now. That top roof line will come back at that point, which will allow that top unit access to the fire escape, and then the railing to go across so they can't get under that shed roof. We were taking off the vinyl. sure it doesn't pass Historic Society's wants and everything else, and we're gonna go back with hardy board because it's better material than wood, and it's gonna last longer, it's not gonna create insects. Once it's painted up, it's gonna look like everything else. And like the person said, it's on the back of the house and really doesn't change any factors there. We were just looking for function. As far as how the two roofs there in the middle of the line, it was extreme heights, working around wires and everything else, so we were more focused on getting everything safe and stable. And where they don't match up, it's a 1 foot little hip shed roof. Technically, it doesn't even need to be there. Because the way the fire escape is and the way we're gonna redo that siding, is all, we could take that off and it all goes straight up. So therefore, the roof that we created gets the gutter. We're gonna rebuild the fascias, the original roof to the house where we took it off up the top. Re-put new gutters there, because none of it has gutters now, and it hasn't, so it's caused more of the water damage as well. Control the water and bring it down. The vinyl soffits, it's rental property and everything else. It does have nice wood soffits and everything else, but if you go around the house, none of these pictures show it, and we have gaping gaps in many different places and where it's all falling down. Again, extreme heights and difficult places to get to. So we thought it would just be simpler to use a vinyl soffit all around the place and not rip it out, but just enclose it so that bugs, birds, and squirrels and everything else can't get in there and cause damage. The railings on the front, we're gonna bring it up to code and just rebuild as is.
Anything else you'd like to add? Okay. Do we have neighborhood input?
So I've received comment from Aaron Streeter on behalf of the Fourth and Gill Neighborhood Association in general. It just says that neighborhood is in support of staff recommendation. They're interested in some input from the building inspection side. They'd also reiterate that the neighborhood precedent has consistently been that original or contributing portions of buildings should have wood siding rather than official. However, the rear piece is such a mishmash of original, early, and later modified additions that the neighborhood would be uneasy about creating a false sense of historical development by doing anything that makes it more consistent. So they are somewhat ambivalent on the siding on the rear elevation.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we'll open up the floor to the board for questions for the applicant.
What is the building permit status of this project?
It's waiting on your all's approval. The owner of the property typically pulls permits when we need them. And they started the units and working on the house before I came on board. And he thought that they already had them, but I guess the other contractor they was working for did 4 general maintenance permits and then took them back. Unbeknownst to the owner.
Okay.
So it's our understanding with the building section is that we need to get your all's approval and then move forward, and we'll get that stamp and move forward there.
But everything's been submitted to them and they have it.
Okay. Yeah, I'd like to tag in the building department about the general maintenance they referred to, and was that an interior permit only?
James Tempe, Chief Building Inspector, City of Knoxville. I learned about this morning, did a little bit of research on it. The project is in for permit review and approval. It is in the plan review process right now, in the queue, awaiting for a plan reviewer to review it for code compliance and all of that. So that's all I have at this time.
So did you inherit this project? This isn't something that you initiated?
I work for the company.
Uh-huh.
I do general maintenance and everything else. They own several properties
Okay.
around.
Mm-hmm. Is this their first project in a historic overlay?
No.
Okay.
We viewed this more as a repair than we did anything else. We had to remove, it looks like we did a lot, but we had to remove in order to fix. So.
So this is almost an after-the-fact review because we've already seen changes that weren't approved by historic zoning and didn't go through building plans review, as I understand it. Okay. I've got a lot of questions on how this back section works, and honestly, looking at the photos of what you have built and what the sketches of what you're proposing, I don't think these sketches are clear enough for me to go by. I don't know if if the plans review requires a licensed design professional for a drawing, but I think they would need something a little clearer than these drawings. Mr. Tente, if you would like to speak to that, you can. But at least from a commission standpoint, I don't feel comfortable voting on proposed changes just based on hand sketches like this.
So under my initial review today, looking at the project, it appears that it is a project that by Tennessee state law requires an architect or engineer for any designs or specifications where they're created. Now, we haven't done the full plan review yet, so I can't confirm that. It is based on state law and the use of the space, and there's exceptions for residential and size and number of stories and square footage, and so there's some other things that have to be determined through it, but that's through the plan review process. So, but my initial thoughts are that it most likely does require a Tennessee licensed architect or engineer.
That makes sense to me. I would think it would need a life safety plan with a fire escape. I don't know how much of that can be pre-existing non-conforming with a fire escape, but since we're making modifications, I assume that would need to be in your design to plans review. So the back, I feel like I have a little bit of trouble just even starting to evaluate what we're looking at. In the front, I wanted to ask about your plan for that front rail. You said rebuilding it to meet code. By the looks of it, those gaps in the ends and between each group of four are probably more than 4 inches. Is that what you found?
The end space, yes.
Yeah, the end spaces, so those wouldn't be up to code. Do you have any ideas on what you would propose to change that? I feel like the grouping and pattern, the rhythm of those, of that rail seems historically significant. I'd love to hear other commissioners speak to that. That could be a thing, that could be a solution of changing the ratio or keeping the ratio and changing the width between each one so that even the larger spaces are no larger than what could fit a 4-inch sphere, or I don't know if that's the exact wording of the code.
That's what it is, it's a 4-inch sphere. I mean, yeah, you're right, if you kept the proportions but narrowed those down to 3.5 or 4-inch maximum, it cannot allow a 4-inch sphere to pass. It's iffy on the gap at the bottom too, on what that dimension is. So James, are you thinking that you're going to review this as an R2?
It depends, because we have to look at the applicant's description on how the building is used. Sometimes that results in phone calls, emails, face-to-face meetings to understand the true use of the space and whether or not it's an R2, or if it's a congregate living R2, or if it's apartments, or if it's IRC single family or 2-family. So that comes out in the plan review process.
Years ago, it was 4 apartments because I used to live in one of them, but they were all very separate with a staircase that went through the center.
That's how the house was designed, from its origin.
I'm curious though, because even if you wouldn't have a requirement for a fire escape, so I'm curious as to why you're trying to salvage it.
I assume there was a requirement at some point, which is why that fire escape was added. I know we got a lot of weather wrap and everything there, but nothing on the original has been changed except for that one wall that was bowing out. So basically, you can kind of see from the chimney, that chimney, basically just that straight wall right there was the only thing that was changed because it needed to be The sidewall on the side, is still original, still existing. Everything was tied in. And you had to take the vinyl off. Once you start taking vinyl off, you had to take all the vinyl off, so. If you don't need it, fire escape, I wouldn't mind seeing it go away either.
Do we have the ability to deliberate on part of this application, or is it every detail or nothing?
You have the ability to make a partial motion of approval or denial and then postpone other elements.
I agree with Commissioner Tillman. It leaves more questions than answers as far as viewing what they're doing on just a regular drawing, and understanding what the finished product is gonna be. I mean, we understand the materials that you're suggesting that you use or recommending, but just the drawing itself makes it very difficult to make a decision, at least on the back portion of it. So maybe as the commission, we can talk about the front, or make a decision on the front.
Yeah, my only note on the front was about the rail, which I discussed before. On the soffit, I've personally repaired this kind of vintage soffit where it's the individual boards. It is tedious, and there's often not an inset guard behind it, but it is doable. The inset guard, it needs to be installed from the attic. Again, this is not the time of year to do that, just weather-wise, but yeah, it's not an easy task, but I think that would be appropriate. Otherwise, I'm inclined to postpone this application. You're going to need architectural drawings for a permit anyway, and I think we would serve better as a commission to be better informed and to review an architectural drawing.
Well, before we do a motion, Lindsay, can you read what the neighborhood said? I guess it was the last paragraph.
So the neighborhood's comment in that last paragraph was related to the siding on the addition section.
Yes, can you read that for me?
And they, Aaron said, I would just reiterate that the neighborhood precedent has originally been that original or contributing portions of buildings should have wood siding rather than artificial. However, the rear piece is a mishmash of original or later modified additions, that they would be uneasy about creating a full sense of historical development by doing anything that makes it more consistent. So they were ambivalent on the siding.
Furthermore, in the event of a postponement or the fact that if you need stamped drawings that you're going to end up dealing with the city at least one more time, I would recommend you do a preliminary design meeting with James's office. They can walk you through, depending on how the occupancy has been determined, what you do and don't have to salvage. So, I mean, you might end up with a more functional or better product, even, you know, without worrying about what comes in front of us. They're very helpful.
I'll make a motion to postpone.
A second.
All right, we have a motion, it's properly seconded. Is there any further discussion from the board? All right, seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. And you said that your owner has done overlay renovations before, and please don't take this personally. I know you're in this tough spot here having to represent them, but if they've done renovations and historic overlays before, they shouldn't be in this situation. They should know the process, respect it, and do it correctly. So if you want to pass that along to them, I would be appreciated. Thank you.
I'll follow up with you guys about next steps.
All right, next case is in Fort Sanders. It's at 1708 Highland Avenue. It is case 6C24HZ.
This is an exterior rehabilitation and a new rear addition. So the exterior rehab scopes include the removal of the existing vinyl siding, the installation of new fiber cement lap siding, repair and replacement and patches to the brick foundation, removal of exterior shutters, replacement of the windows and doors. The front porch will be reconstructed in kind, including new railings and new brick pier supports. The front dormer will be removed and reconstructed to fix structural issues. The applicant is also proposing a new rear addition, which includes an additional 5-foot addition on the rear elevation that will continue that side gable roof line, and then a new gable roof dormer on the rear slope. So the dormer will have paired double hung windows on the rear elevation, and there are triangular brackets to reflect the primary house. Some of the staff findings, overall the material elements do meet the Fort Sanders design guidelines. The project should incorporate the vertical corner boards and window trim along with the existing details such as that wood louvered vent in the front dormer. And the drawings do indicate the retention of this brick chimney and the triangular brackets or the reconstruction. In general, the placement of a new addition on the rear is appropriate within the guidelines. The 5-foot rear addition and the new dormer are compatible with the overall scale of the house. The dormer has a roof pitch and details comparable to the house. It won't be visible from the front. The reconstructed front dormer should match the size, placement, and roof details of the existing. Final modifications to the site plan will be necessary to meet city engineering standards for parking. The house and parking area should remain within the impervious surface requirements for the base zoning. The final site plan could be approved by staff. So staff's recommending approval of 6Z 24HZ subject to the conditions that the final drawings incorporate. Corner boards and window trim, the triangular brackets and the rectangular vent. The brick columns on the reconstructed front porch match the existing in size and design, and the final site plan meets city engineering standards and the requirements of the base zoning.
Thank you, Lindsay. Is the applicant present? Good morning.
Morning, John Holmes, 5914 Great Gables Drive. I think Lindsay's summary is really complete. We will do the corner boards, the 1x6 smooth hardy fascia. The architect has a hard time drawing those in there, but we will do that like we do on all the other projects. I would note on the chimney, it's going to have to be taken down and then rebuilt. It's pretty sketchy.
All right, thank you. Do we have any neighborhood input?
Randall DeFord from the Fort Sanders neighborhood said that John got it right with this one.
Good job, Jeff. All right. Open the floor to the board for any questions or comments for the applicant.
I would just add if that brick chimney has to be taken down and reconstructed, that it follows Secretary of Interior guidelines for brick work. There's a preservation brief that outlines exactly how that should be done.
Sure.
Lindsay, is it your intention for the replacement door to be reviewed by staff?
So typically those are reflected in the final, I didn't include a condition of approval on this one. The final construction drawings are reviewed and approved by staff as they're submitted for permitting.
Okay.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve based on staff recommendation.
I'll second.
Thank you. We've got a motion properly seconded. Any further discussion?
Do we need to add about the brick being done per standards?
Yes, I would like to amend my motion. That we accept staff recommendation plus that the rebuilt chimney adhere to guidelines of the Secretary of Interior. Thank you.
Your second stand? Okay, thank you. All right, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, John. Oh, it's me. Okay. Next case is at 1710 Highland, and it is case 6D24-HZ.
Going right next door. So this is another exterior rehab and addition of a dormer. The exterior rehab scopes include the removal of the stone veneer siding, the installation of new fiber cement lap siding, repair and replacement and patches to the brick foundation, replacement of windows and doors. The front porch will also be reconstructed. It will feature new wood posts on brick piers, as you can see here, and a new railing. Right now they are enclosed with the stone veneer siding. This application also includes reconstruction of the window wells, these side elevation window wells at the basement level, and a removal of rear steps to the basement level. The application also includes a new dormer addition, so the existing dormer, which has a clipped gable, will be removed and a larger one will be installed, featuring 2 pairs of double hung windows. Some of the findings: reconstruction of the front porch and columns does meet the design guidelines, removing that stone veneer on the porch railings, columns, and also the siding is appropriate within the guidelines, as that's not a historic material. The reconstructed porch details are appropriate for the house's craftsman style. The drawings indicate that the triangular brackets will be retained and then also installed on that dormer addition. The drawings also indicate retaining and recreating this house's pretty unique clipped gable roof line. In general, placing the addition on the rear roof slope is appropriate within the design guidelines. The new dormer is the same height as existing, and the width is compatible with the overall scale of the house. And the dormer incorporates roof details compatible with the house. Final modifications to the site plan will be necessary to meet city engineering standards, and they should also stay within the base zoning. So the staff recommendation is approval of certificate 6D24HC, subject to the condition that the final site plan meets city engineering standards and requirements of the base zoning.
Thank you, Lindsay. Is this yours?
Yep, this is one. John Holmes, 5914 Grey Gables Drive again. Again, Lindsay's got everything on there. I would note that stone is not real. It's some kind of faux product. We kind of contemplated keeping it, but I don't think it's appropriate either when we looked at it.
Okay.
Other than that, it's everything.
Thank you. Anything from Randall?
It's called form stone, by the way. It's a kitschy little product that
I was curious what it
dots
was.
everywhere through here. There used to be, the guy who brought it here had an office in South Knoxville.
Same comment. The neighborhood was supportive of the application.
Thank you. All right. Open the floor to the board for any questions, comments?
Yeah, John, do you know what the foundation looks like underneath the stone?
Yeah, this is actually has the best foundation of any house I've ever seen in the fort. It has a original form board concrete foundation.
I saw that in the back. I wondered if it was
It's-
throughout. Okay.
It is. It's throughout the entire basement. It's unusual.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you planning on any type of stucco finish for the
No,
on the outside, or?
No, I had selected it's called Old English from General Shale. It kind of matches the historic look with a buff colored mortar. So the lower section would be kind of like a 2 foot of brick, and then be siding from there up.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that brick may end up protruding out a little bit from the siding, do you think? Or?
It will. It'll protrude about 4 inches, and then it'll have an angled cap on it
Okay.
to delineate it. And be the same brick on the front porch too.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
I have a question. Lindsay, you've covered this, but is the existing roof line, is that the same? It's staying at the same height?
Right. There won't be any changes to that roof line.
Okay, thank you.
My only question really for the board is that kind of form poured concrete, is that a historic value that we should try to have exposed? I've never seen that before, but it does seem to be unique.
I don't think you can see it right now.
Well, I mean like,
Sorry.
as opposed to covering it with the brick,
I'm not sure how high it goes up either. It's something I've not been able to uncover. You can see it in the basement. You can't see any of it from the outside currently.
Yeah. We don't know what it would look like. It may be in pretty sorry shape by the time you get the peel and stick brick off too. If anybody had any thoughts on that, I didn't feel particularly strong about it, but
I'm fine with the brick.
okay. With that, I'll make a motion to approve with the staff recommendation, which was, the single staff recommendation for final site plan to meet city engineering standards and requirements of the base zone.
I second.
Thank you. We have a motion properly seconded. Any further discussion from the board? If not, we'll call the vote. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right. Thank you, John.
Thank you.
All right, we're still in the fort, 1610 Clinch Avenue. This is case 6E-24-HZ.
So this is the proposed reconstruction of the roof line and addition of dormers along with exterior rehabilitation. So you can see some photographs of the existing house here. The existing roof is out of order, so you can see here it's the 1610. So the existing roof has a 6.5/12 pitch. The height measurement is approximately 32 feet 5 inches to the midpoint of the roof slope. And the hipped roof dormers are centered on the front and side roof slopes. So you can see the existing conditions of the house here. The proposed roof pitch is 9.5/12, and it will measure approximately 35 feet 1 inch to the midpoint of the roof slope. And the applicant is proposing new hipped roof dormers for the front, side, and rear roof slopes. So you can see the elevation drawings for the demo here on the front and rear, and the sides. And we'll go back to these, and then these are what are proposed for the new project. The application also includes new double hung windows in the existing fenestrations, repair and repointing to the brick exterior, new roof cladding, and a small amount of windows on the side and rear elevations will be enclosed with masonry to match the existing. I think that's the clearest on these demo elevations. You can see which ones will be enclosed. So some of the findings. The primary relevant design guideline in Fort Sanders is states that additions should be made to the side or rear of the building. Dormer additions have been approved in Fort Sanders, both by increasing the size of existing dormers and adding new, along with slight increases to roof pitch. The largest new dormer will be located on the rear roof slope. The front and sides are similar in width to the existing, so you can see side and side and how those compare to the existing. The proposed fiber cement shake siding on the new dormers does meet the guidelines. Guidelines recommend that new roof pitches are not less than 8/12. They also recommend that the house remains proportional to comparable houses in height and width. The 9.5/12 pitch roof is comparable to adjacent houses like 1616 and 1620 Clinch Avenue, but it is 3 feet taller than the original roof line, so the commission should discuss the height and the pitch of the new roof. Overall, the exterior has already received significant modifications. The proposed window replacements are appropriate within the guidelines except for the ground level windows on the facade. Currently, they are double hung windows, and they are shown as full light picture windows. The guidelines recommend that windows should be double hung sash. The original windows to be enclosed are on secondary elevations and at basement level, and the drawing does retain the doors, transom, and side lights. In terms of the site plan, Fort Sanders has design guidelines for providing parking access off the alley or a side street. They note that the surface parking shall always be to the rear of the building. Access to the alley from the site is not feasible due to the substantial slope at the rear of the alley, and its narrow width, and there's a large parking garage to the rear. 1610 and 16 already have large gravel surface lots between the two houses, and these front driveways are already existing. So all efforts should be taken to place new parking areas beside or behind the primary building and avoid the front yard. Final site plan revisions will be necessary based on accessible parking requirements and city engineering standards. So staff's recommendation is pending additional discussion by the HCC on the new roof height and pitch. Staff recommends approval of 6E-24HZ subject to the conditions that all masonry repair and repointing follow NPS specifications, the ground level windows on the facade be revised to double hung, and then the final site plan to meet city engineering standards.
Thank you, Lindsay. Is the applicant present? Good morning.
Good morning. Brian Dennison, 110 West Summit.
Brian, do you have anything to add to Lindsay's presentation?
The goal was to, maintain the exterior front of the building as much as we can, given the historical nature of it. So, other than changing the roof, we've maintained the front fenestration, and then again maintaining proportion of the roof and the dormers so that it's not out of proportion and also out of character of the neighborhood. So we've pretty much done what we can to maintain that while increasing the square footage underneath the roof.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from Randall?
So, the This one is regarding 1610 and 1616 Clinch Avenue. We request that the Historic Zoning Commission not approve any changes to a structure that threatens its contributing status to our National Register District. While we ask this specifically due to the request to raise the roof, it should apply to the request to rearrange windows and other significant architectural features in highly visible areas. If this means denying the request outright, then that is what we ask. If the HCC is able to study by or ascertain by consultation to the answer, then we ask you to deny without prejudice until you are able to confirm that their status in the district and the district itself is not threatened.
Thank you. At this time, we'll open the floor to the board for questions or comments.
Lindsay, just for clarification, this building is contributing per the status?
Yes.
So square footage was driving the changes to the roof?
Could we slowly scroll through the window changes one more time?
I'll start at this is the front and the rear. The secondary entry. And the left and the right sides. And then front, rear. Oh yeah, those are called out. Both sides. So that one's just being slightly enclosed.
So the front of the building is maintained other than the roof.
That double window that's being enclosed, do you believe that's an original opening, or is that part of that heavily modified corner? Yeah, on that right elevation.
This one here,
Yes.
that was a porch at one point, so it's not original. You can see that.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Are you proposing to infill that all with brick up above this window as well?
If we can, and matching it might not be the best solution because it'll stick out.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
What type of space currently occupies behind where those window infills would be?
It's apartments.
Right, but is that someone's bedroom?
It is, yes, correct.
Will they still have one egress-sized window in there?
On the rear.
I feel like right now that rear corner shows that clearly was originally porches. I feel like the change that's proposed is going to take away, at least it's not great, but you can tell that there were porches, so it could at some point be restored. I feel like the changes may take away that historical or proof of the original.
Yeah, I feel even if enclosing those windows, board and batten would probably be more appropriate and would represent the original structure better, I think, rather than brick infill, which would be cheaper and easier for you as well.
Right.
And I personally don't mind the infilling of the basement windows, but I think on the opposite side where there's a group of four on the first and second level, I think that infilling is a little disruptive. I wonder if other commissioners agree. I think it's the left side. No, not, sorry, getting lost. Which elevation? Was it right? No, not that one. Not that.
The rear.
Oh, okay, it's the rear elevation. Never mind. Yeah, I'm not as worried because that's a real elevation. And that's part of that old porch area as well. Okay.
Correct.
Disregard.
Is there precedence for us having approved a roof height increase in Fort Sanders previously?
Yes, there was a relatively, it wasn't as substantial as this one, but a previous project on Clinch Avenue with the dormers as well were added.
Okay.
I appreciate the the replication of dormer ratios, the additions on the sides and changing the one in the front. But we've denied raising roofs before, and I feel like that would meet the guidelines better, besides being an extremely expensive, complete roof rebuild. I'm inclined to reject that portion of the project, which I don't know if that ruins the project for you, if not being able to raise the roof makes it unfeasible.
It's definitely detrimental.
Detrimental, okay, yeah. It's not what we like to hear, but I think that, yeah, it is in conflict with the guidelines to change the pitch from 6.5 to 9, in my opinion.
I would agree.
I mean, luckily it's a hip, so it doesn't appear as tall as it would be, and it does match the pitch at 1616. So it's not going to feel out of character with other roofs and pitches adjacent.
I would make the point too that our guidelines for this neighborhood recommend a roof pitch not less than 8/12. So this would actually be more appropriate for the guidelines, but it's a special case.
I would be inclined to approve this if this particular style of house typically had a 9/12 roof and you were able to show that, and this is an aberration, but I'm not as knowledgeable about roof pitches and American style homes at this time, which matches which to know.
I don't know if there's traditionally a standard pitch with this style. I mean, it wouldn't be a 12/12, but I mean, it would definitely be, 6 to 9.5 or so, 10 at the max.
Abby? All right. Anybody have anything else to say? If not, let's entertain the motion.
I'll just add the roof pitch is really what's, and the height increase of the roof is really what I'm opposed to at this point. I'm trying to think through a better solution and I can't come up with one at the moment. But I think the concern that the neighborhood was trying to express was the height increase is one thing, but also requiring the removal and replacement of all of the dormers also affects the amount of historic material and character defining features, which is what's required for the National Register for it to remain contributing. And I think that's what I'm trying to reason through. Is there a way to keep the dormers but increase the height? And I don't know if that's possible. Because if you're increasing the entire roof, reconstructing the entire roof, that's it would be difficult to keep the dormers and do that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I wouldn't say it's impossible because nothing is these days, but
It would be very complicated.
difficult.
Did the neighborhood include a line about consultation? Is that a different project?
It was just, said if the HCC is able to study by or ascertain by consultation the answer, which they were discussing, like, would it be contributing or non-contributing based on the roof line change?
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if the roof line change would render it non-contributing or not. That's above my pay grade. But if the board were to reject the roof raising as the applicant, would you prefer a postponement and redesign, or the neighborhood recommended a denial without prejudice? Is this something that you would redesign, or?
Yes.
Okay.
Many of the homes that are considered contributing have had roof line changes, and when the documents were created, those were just noted, so it becomes a part of the history. So I wouldn't think that the neighborhood's concern of it being removed are valid.
If there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion to postpone.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion from the board?
Just to be sure, this postponement is based on what exactly?
Raising the roof, changing the roof pitch.
To allow them time to sort that out?
Yes.
Yeah.
Should we go ahead and add the board and batten or redesign of the formerly enclosed porch?
I think so.
As a condition of a postponement, or just, we can add it as advice, but, yeah. You know,
Does that need to be noted in the motion, Lindsay, or? Okay. Any further discussion? Did Tanya, anything?
I guess I'm just thinking about, we have two different commissioners making what it sounds like two opposite statements. Commissioner Hearn and Commissioner Randazzo. And I could be wrong. It seems like you were saying you thought it could mess with the historic status of it, but you were saying no, it doesn't.
I don't think it would affect the status on the register.
And you think it does, Commissioner Hearn?
I don't know that that's necessarily our role to make as a commission as to whether or not it remains contributing or not. I was just trying to address the concerns from the neighborhood, expressing that. It's not really our role as a commission to say it will remain contributing or non-contributing. That's not within our.
Is it within our purview, though, to do some research and find
Correct.
out whether it would endanger its status or not, regardless of how we feel about that?
I can,
Okay.
Which I think the postponement would
Allow us to.
allow us to do that
Okay.
as well.
I'm not sure though still that would be our purview. I think that we're held to what the neighborhood guidelines are.
Which is what Commissioner Hearns is saying, right?
Okay.
Right?
Thank you.
No, I'm asking for clarification. Is that right? Is that what you're saying, Commissioner Hearns?
Because I thought Commissioner Hearns was addressing their concern, but not necessarily what the rules or regulations are for the neighborhood, which are different.
Right?
I see where your concern is coming from. It's not our role to redesign based on what a neighborhood comes to us. It's our role to evaluate it. Technically, the design guidelines say it has to be higher than a certain pitch. But it doesn't discuss particularly removing and then reconstructing a roof. It doesn't address that specifically. I think that's different where if you're talking about changing a section of a roof line and changing the pitch of that as opposed to reconstructing the entire roof and changing the pitch of that. I think that's a difference. Is that correct, Lindsay? Do the design guidelines say anything about removing and replacing a roof and
They do
changing the
not.
roof line?
they do not. They speak to additions in general.
So this would be considered an addition with the increased height?
Yes, an addition of space, yes.
And in general, in this neighborhood, like when we're looking at roof pitches, you know, there's a number of housing stock that do have a higher pitch. You know, those high Victorians that are such, that were so prevalent in the neighborhood. But, you know, these are a different style of home. And so what we have is a situation with a house with a roof pitch that is here before us, that's original. And we're talking about changing it to something that's different. And so, you know, the general feel of the guidelines to suggest a higher pitch is great in general for a lot of the neighborhood, but like this is a different situation on this home. And so I think the original, what we're looking at with the original pitch is much more in line
thank you for that addition.
All right, we have a motion that's been properly seconded. Can we call the vote, or is there more discussion? Don't want to cut anybody off.
No, thank you for that.
Sure. All right. All those in favor for postponement? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Thank you. All right. Our last case in Fort Sanders is at 1616 Clinch Avenue. It's 6F24HZ.
Okay, this is also next door. So this is a proposed reconstruction of the roof line, addition of dormers, and a second story addition. So as you can see here, here is the original house. There is an existing hipped roof that has a 10/12 pitch, and it measures approximately 33 feet 2 inches to the midpoint of that roof slope. And there are hipped dormers on the front and rear roof slopes. So you can see again, here's the roof line as original. There's two sort of projecting hipped roof massings off to the side, as you can see. And there are a lot of additions on the right side elevation here. The roof is going to be reconstructed with a single roof slope that's 10/12, so that's the same pitch as the existing, and it will measure approximately 34 feet 1 inch to the midpoint of the roof slope. A new hipped roof dormer will be located on the front, and then 2 new hipped roof dormers will be located on both side roof slopes. There's also an addition proposed for the right rear elevation second story, so that's what I'm calling out with my cursor here. This section currently features a low slope roof. It's a single story addition, so that existing building footprint will be enclosed within the overall hipped roof and lap siding. So just to go back, you can see the rear and corner elevation has an amount of non-historic additions there, and that will be reconstructed within one roof slope. Overall, the primary scope of work will increase that height and interior capacity of the house's upper level. The roof will be removed and reconstructed with one large hipped roof. The addition will increase the building's height by 10 inches, and the reconstructed roof pitch will remain the same. The drawings indicate the intent to retain the corbelling detail and the wide eave overhangs. The primary guideline as discussed is that additions should be made to the rear side of the building. Again, dormer additions have been approved in Fort Sanders. This front dormer will be larger in width than the original. The side elevation dormers are somewhat larger in scale. You can see those here, so the commission should discuss the scale of those additions. The addition proposed for the second story is for a rear and side corner of the house. That already features a one-story low-slope roof addition. It doesn't expand the building's footprint, and it will incorporate materials and roofline details compatible with the overall house. Again, in terms of the site plan, guidelines recommend providing parking off the alley or side street. However, that might not be feasible in this situation. All efforts should be taken to place new parking areas beside or behind the primary building and avoid that front yard, but final site plan revisions will be necessary based on accessible parking requirements and city engineering standards. So pending additional discussion from the commission on the roof dormers, staff's recommending approval of 6F24HZ subject to the conditions that the reconstructed roof retain the wide eave overhangs and the decorative corbel detail. The final window installations reflect elevation drawings submitted for HCC review, and the final site plan meets city plans review and inspections and city engineering standards. Avoiding that front yard parking unless that's infeasible due to accessibility requirements.
Thank you, Lindsay. Is the applicant present?
Ryan Dennison, 110 West Summit. This one is a bit challenging given the number of additions, the second floor, what used to be a sunroom or that projects out, just the incohesiveness of the whole building. So trying to regularize that, maintaining some of its, bringing back some of the character of the house, and then maintaining the roof pitch and adding dormers just to get additional space on the third floor. And then on the front, just trying to at least bring some sort of rhythm that's kind of been taken away with the additions and changes and modifications throughout, who knows, 20, 30 years. So just trying to make it a little more cohesive than what's there now. but maintaining the character of the building.
Okay. Neighborhood comments?
The neighborhood comment for the previous case applies here.
Thank you. All right. We'll open the floor up to the board for discussion and questions.
I have a question about the front elevation in the second floor. Can you, when you're looking at that from the interior, did you find any evidence of the original placement?
We haven't done any exploratory work yet. We're just dealing with what we have now.
I guess I would be curious to see what the original window pattern was. I would think there may have been 3 windows symmetrically.
On the second floor? Yeah. In proportion to the one on the left and centered over the dormer, I would assume.
Do you think the porch elements are original? Particularly on that right side below that hip?
On the right side, no.
Yeah, they're not?
No.
Okay. Do you know if the foundation is continuous around that hip area, or is it a new brick foundation?
It's an addition, so it's new.
Okay. My first thought was that would be a sleeping porch or something upstairs, but yeah, there's no way to tell. You may be able to tell once you dig into it, but yeah, it is it's odd looking. And then just for my own clarification, in the site plan, this is the middle building?
Correct.
Okay.
Liz, was your concern about those windows, like keeping the core of the house where the windows would be, and then so that it clearly shows that's an addition or enclosure on the side? Is that what you were trying to?
I think what Commissioner Tillman, you're thinking the front right, sorry, the front right corner may have been a sleeping porch.
Mm-hmm.
So I was just curious what the original window proportions might have looked like,
Right. Okay.
thinking that maybe those 3 would be. Well, I guess in looking at it, it does look like those 3 windows are symmetrical if that was a sleeping porch.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Like now it shows that it was an enclosed at some point, where if we add a window there, that doesn't make it as clear that that's an addition, but it would, they're proposing to shift the window to the right? Is that what the drawing is showing, or to the left?
To the right.
Okay.
And you're also shifting the front dormer to the right, so it's symmetrical with the pit, with the hip ridge.
Yeah, yep. Because right now it's not. And I think that's only due because there was an addition at some point that threw that dormer off center.
And this property was contributing, Lindsay?
Yes.
Okay.
What is your roof plan for the addition? I'm looking at the demolition elevation on the left side. Is there an existing flat roof, or are you going to enclose that with a...
We're enclosing it and extending the hip roof over top of it.
Okay. Sorry, I know you spend, a lot of applicants feel this pain where they spend hours working on something and then we're, holding the paper up trying to figure out which side of the house is which. It can be a little bit of a disconnection in the time we spend looking at them, but just trying to get it right.
Any other questions, comments?
I think my thoughts on this one are similar to the previous one, that the changes are so significant with the window placements and with the infill of the back corner of what they would cover, what probably was the original back wall of the original house, that it's really going to be hard in the future to be able to see what the original house actually looked like. And it clearly has some terrible, terrible additions right now. But at least you can almost puzzle together what the original house still looked like.
Yeah, I think this is a great representation of the neighborhood here, of the Fort Sanders neighborhood and what's happened over time in the neighborhood. And I feel like one of our goals for the commission is to make sure that we're not encouraging development changes that kind of change that fabric of what that original home would have been. I know it's very difficult to see what those additions, you know, where the original house is, but you know, we don't need to encourage projects, or I don't think we need to approve projects that kind of muddy that water of what the original home looked like, or what it was. Like when we're adding additions on, it needs to speak to what that house was before, and so it's pretty difficult in this situation, but you know, it's there.
I appreciate the attempt of changing the roof line to incorporate a weird hip massing, but I think changing the roof line again is not in compliance with the guidelines, and that's what's going to primarily inform my decision. Even though that hip does look really weird as it is part of the story of the house in some way. It may have been a four-season room, may have been a sleeping porch, it may have just been a windowless addition. We're not really sure. I'm also concerned about the existing chimney relative to a new dormer. I'm wondering if that chimney would need to be raised, if it's active. That's more of a code question for one of the architects on the board or even our building department.
Well, I mean, is it active? Does it work?
No, it's not active. And we're not looking to make it active.
I mean, it's not really a code issue, I don't think, at this point. It's not really a code issue, I think, at this point. James could speak better about that, but it's a little awkward that it's the same height and everything else around it has grown.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that it may be, I don't know about in this neighborhood, but we have discussed several times about, like removing chimneys or reducing how visible they are is something to take into consideration, regardless of whether or not they function as a fireplace anymore.
All right, which way do we want to go, board?
Based on the same criteria as the last case, really, just the raising of the roof elevation, I don't have any opposition or thoughts to rear additions as well. I understand the thought process of a cohesive roof that encompasses it all, but I think the story of multiple roofs, no matter how unaesthetic they may be, is more important to the historic character of the home. I'll make a motion to postpone.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion. It's been properly seconded. Any further discussion? All right, we'll call the question. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you very much. All right, our last case is in Old North Knox. It's at 128 West Glenwood. It is case 6H24-HZ.
And Brian, I'll follow up with you to discuss the next steps So this project is at 128 West Glenwood Avenue. And so this is a proposed new secondary structure, which you can see on the site plan here. The garage measures 24 by 24 feet, and it's proposed for the front left corner of the property. The site plan doesn't include setbacks. The garage is proposed to be connected to the rear left side of the main house with a gable roof covered walkway. So the garage features a 6/12, so you can see here, this is it's going to connect to the front of the house, and I can zoom in on these. And so the garage features a 6/12 roof, clad in architectural shingles, an exterior of woodlap siding, and rectangular fiberglass windows. These specifications don't align with the elevation drawings, but they are provided as a separate sheet in the application packet. The garage door is shown as a typical multi-panel door, but the specs describe a Rosemont carriage style door. The scope of work also includes the installation of new fiberglass windows on the basement level of the primary house, which includes an awning window, 3 rectangular 3-light windows, and 1 3/1 double hung window. These specifications are included in the application packet. And they are shown to be replaced along the basement line. So the garage is proposed to be located adjacent to the house towards the front of the property. It will be accessed from an existing curb cut that currently leads to gravel front yard parking. The property also features an operable alley, which could provide access to the rear. The guidelines note that garages shall be located to the rear of primary buildings on the lot. So the placement does not meet the design guidelines. The guidelines note that new outbuildings may only use materials and design characteristics from a list, and it goes through the roof pitch and materials there. So the outbuilding here has a 6/12 pitch, which is not the 12/12 recommended in the guidelines. There are discrepancies between the submitted drawings and the materials list submitted to HCC. The materials list notes woodlap siding, fiberglass windows and doors, and a steel carriage style door. The applicant has clarified these will be double hung windows. The application does not show where the windows will be installed in the house's basement level. The proposed windows are compatible in design with the existing house. Fiberglass windows wouldn't be appropriate within the guidelines as replacements for original. However, new may be appropriate for new windows on minimally visible elevations, particularly at grade where there's moisture intrusion issues. But staff is recommending postponement of 6H24HZ to allow the applicant to revise the garage's placement, provide accurate drawings, and provide further information on where new windows will be installed.
Thank you, Lindsay. Is the applicant present?
Yes, this is Colton Thomas with FE Trainer Construction, representing the client.
Thank you, Colton. Do you have anything to add to Lindsay's presentation on this project?
Yeah, I can go down the list here. So the windows are on the existing house. They are actually at grade or below grade, which I know is a concern for moisture on those units is the main concern there. And then as far as the actual garage goes, the client prefers to have more durable window, but understands if those need to be wood on the garage addition. And the door as well. I think the door is also called out as fiberglass on the materials list, but it's understood that if it needs to be wood, it can be wood. And we can provide those pictures of the existing house, the location of those. And then as far as the garage location goes, it's where on the site plan there, that lower lawn section it's essentially like a swell down there that, on the bottom left side of this plan here. But they see anytime it rains, that spot is the low spot on that block. It floods about, it's in some places it's 12 inches deep or so. And we can provide photos of that as well, if need be. And I guess a question as well too is like, how far back would it? It's essentially the rear of the garage is where the water begins to pool frequently. So I guess the question is like, how far back does it need to be? Does the front of the garage need to be in line with the rear of the house? Because obviously it could be pushed back some, because it's gonna be, it falls off, so the garage is gonna be raised up above that current grade. Let's see, the plan discrepancies, we're saying the materials list is really the true reference there. This is a plan that was purchased online, so and we could redline these plans as well if need be. And then as far as the roof pitch goes, the existing house is a 512, the existing structure. And the client originally proposed the house this garage being an accessory dwelling unit. And the city came back and said, hey, the accessory structure needs to be below 18 feet total. So that's why the client had the roof slope lowered to meet that requirement. And there might be somebody here that can tell us if a garage without an accessory dwelling in it can be higher than 18, because then we could raise that back to the 1212 that's required there. That's all.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bowman, would you like to weigh in?
Yes. Sean Bullen, 115 East Scott Avenue, representing Old North Knoxville. First, the neighborhood wants to thank the owners of the house for the diligent restoration they completed over the last 2 years. And although we can surely understand the desire for a garage, this violates our guidelines in many places, specifically the placement of the garage. So I'll go through these, but primarily the placement of the garage, we are opposed to it because one, there would never be a carriage house there. And then two, it's a vacant lot beside the house. One reason that we would, the guidelines state towards the rear, because at this point in time, obviously the greatest desire for a vacant lot is to have a house there at some point in time. By building a garage in the spot, that will likely never happen. So we do want the house towards the rear. And if they were to do it directly behind the house, they could do some creative things with the rear or side of the garage that might benefit their use. I did know one of the drawings they want to put a pool back there potentially at some point in time. So I'm willing to work with the general contractor or the owners to maybe talk through those. A couple other aspects of the application that we weren't in agreement with were the garage doors. They're supposed to look like carriage house doors and not something you would see that was built today. The roof pitch, as mentioned, we know this is a historically incorrect. We messed up when we wrote the guidelines. It should not be a 12-12 pitch roof. The roof pitch here is appropriate for the floor square that it would complement. As far as the windows go, there's lots of inconsistencies with the windows, so we need to understand which windows are going to go where. And I believe those windows on the foundation were filled in without a permit, so Google Maps might actually show what the original windows were, if that's not been updated yet. And the dog run, the walkway between the garage and the house, that becomes an architectural detail. There's no precedent for that for this period of time, so we are unfortunately opposed to that. Though we will happily work with the owners on the desire to have a garage, we do feel that their current plan violates guidelines in many places and would prefer postponement.
Thank you. At this time, we'll open the floor to the board for questions and comments.
Hey, Sean, are you aware of any covered walkways in Old North Knoxville, our neighborhood?
Yes, not historic. So I do want to bring up something you had mentioned earlier about precedent in a neighborhood. This is a quasi-judicial forum, which means if you make a decision in one case, you don't have to duplicate your mistake because we make mistakes, you're all volunteers. So precedent has no place in this conversation. There is one on Scott Avenue that was approved maybe 12 years ago. It was a situational event. A woman lived in the house. She woke up in the middle of the night. Someone was in her house and shot at her. She was afraid to live there, so the commission, sympathetically allowed her to build a run from her garage to her house, and I can understand that. Should it have been allowed? Likely not, but sympathy plays a factor in that one situation. So that's the only example I know of. It should not have been allowed, but it was, and we're going to be looking at it for years to come. I know the owners that live in the house, they have no desire to take it down.
Thank you. And my interpretation of this is a corner lot, so it's hard to, everything's a little bit more difficult, is that the house front would be on Glenwood, and then to place the garage in the rear, it could access Armstrong.
Mm-hmm.
Is that an option that you think the neighborhood would be more amenable to?
We can see, so a Foursquare sort of overlaps Victorian and Craftsman, and some Craftsmen do have garages that face primary roads. I can think of one on Kenyon and one directly across the street. So I would see no argument for denying Armstrong access.
Thank you.
One additional comment here, the lots have actually been combined. The side lot was purchased where the garage is, and now it's now one lot. I don't know if that adds anything or not.
I don't think it will change our decision at all. I would think that a garage facing Armstrong would be more compliant with the guidelines, and you may get by with having a lot less paving. As far as the breezeway goes, in its current design and length, it seems very obviously not historic, which, in some cases for small additions that are clearly not historic, that can easily be removed, we've been more lenient, especially how it ties into the back here. But I also think the way it's been redlined here, where it attaches, is going to be a water issue, where we have a shed going directly into the brick. I don't know what the other elevation would be for an alternate location, if that would be easier, but I think that seems problematic. But it also would be clearly non-historic, which I think would be, I think it's possible, I would say. I think that's all I have.
I'll make a motion to postpone per staff recommendation.
I second.
Thank you. We have a motion properly seconded. Any further discussion with the board? All right, if not, we'll call the question. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you very much. All right, our last order of business is recommendations on an H overlay at 3030 North Central Street.
Okay.
Lindsay?
So we are reviewing the address 3030 North Central Street for a historic landmark overlay zone. Just as a recap, the Historic Zoning Commission is charged with reviewing the appropriateness of a historic overlay, and you guys make a recommendation to the Planning Commission, which, so the historic overlay is incorporated as a formal rezoning. We can see the house in question here. Overall, the staff recommendation is that this property does meet the criteria for a historic H landmark overlay zone. It embodies an architectural style or an architectural type and a period of construction. It's an intact example of an American Foursquare house, which is a common vernacular form that has 2-story squared floor plans. The form is commonly commonly found in many architectural styles. So a prairie, colonial, revival, and craftsman. The house incorporates craftsman details, such as 3/1 double hung windows, wide eave overhangs, and tapered piers on brick. Overall, it retains integrity of location. We can see here where it's called out. It fronts central, but it's on the edge of the Lincoln Park neighborhood. Has integrity of setting with a scale reflective of the house's location on a larger corridor. The site, as you can see here, it also retains large street trees, and the design and materials remain intact. So the relevant design guidelines for this would be the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. And so staff's recommendation is that this property meets the criteria for historic overlay zoning, and the design guidelines would be the SOI standards for rehab.
Thank you, Lindsay. I'd like to open the floor, or do we need to hear from the applicant? Or
They're here.
would the applicant like to speak?
Good morning. Jared Eisenhower with Sanders Pace Architecture. One thing we wanted to add, the property was recently purchased at the end of 2023. The new owners are just community-minded individuals. One of them lives in the adjacent neighborhood. So the effort here is to try and protect the house, the character of the neighborhood, and kind of give it this layer of protection in the event that future development pushes that way, or in the event that the property is sold later in the future, kind of giving this added layer of protection to the house and to the neighborhood. So,
thank you. Do we typically hear from the neighborhood on this?
Not in this instance.
Okay, all right. Then we'll just open the floor to the board for questions, comments, questions for the applicant.
Do you have any history of the home that you can share with us, even its approximate age?
it was built in the 1930s. We did a little kind of deep dive on the property. It was owned by a family from the date of construction up until the 2023 purchase from our client. The house itself has sat there. We looked through kind of the historic aerials that are available on KGIS. There was, it was one of the first residential developments in that area that kind of pushed to the northeast to form the Oakwood Lincoln Park kind of neighborhood. And then currently that north central corridor is kind of sputtered with commercial development, industrial development. So this kind of holds down that bookend of the bottom left corner of the neighborhood, and it's one of the reasons we want to try and protect it. It is one of the last kind of residential developments in that specific area.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add that I've watched this house. I'm really pleased to see that after the sale that this is a really positive outcome, so I'm happy to see that. I'll make a motion to approve it. Do we need to approve it? Yeah, okay.
I'll second.
Thanks. Any other discussion from anyone else? All right, we've got a motion. It's been properly seconded. All those in favor, aye? Aye. Any opposed? All right. Thank you.
Thank you.